Kupina kuphi makama dolopena satkomplasta khona. Warm welcome to this week's edition of Yilungelo Lakho. It's your right. Luhlelo ke luniphathele konke lokutawuthinza wena namalungelo akho njengemthengi. Mina ke ngisimpiwe eNgcongwane. Bekunene, there are two most important things most consumers want to know about their pensions. It's how they grow from time to time and what cash value will be paid out to us in the end. Bukeli iminyaka yakho yekutalwa kukhula kwemvuzo wakho umnyaka neminyaka nekuthi-ke nawuthatha umhlala phansi noma ke utiyekelele ngekwakho emsebentini nekuthi umnotfo ukhula kanjani. Tonke ke letinfo leti tinenzima yokuthi-ke utfola malini uma sekuphuma imali yemhlala phansi noma ke impension yakho. Konke lokunenzima yokuthi-ke imali yakho yempension ibala kanjani kubitwa nge-actuarial factors noma ke pheceleti actuarial interest. Kukhuluma kabanti ke nathi ngako konke lokho asimukele ke Isaac Letlaphe lomele i-Government Employees Pension Fund EGEPF. Babe Isaac, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome.
Thank you, Sir Spear, and good afternoon to our viewers at home.
Yeah, well, I did touch on the background of what actuarial factors or actuarial interest is, but maybe if you could just expand, actuarial interest, what is it based on, and interest, is it calculated on based the age or the market factors or economic factors, etc.
Thank you, Simpiwe. So actuarial interest are an estimate of what the GPF would need to set aside for benefits of our members when they exit. To put it simply, the GPF would need to know as to if you are going to exit the fund today, how much are we going to pay you?
Okay.
And
okay, just before you continue, if you exit based on what? If you leave the fund, if you die, or if you resign?
If you leave the fund today, irrespective of what the exit mode is.
Okay.
Benefits are calculated based on different exit rules. And today we can then calculate as to how much we'll need to pay you if you exit, depending on how you're exiting the fund.
Okay.
So actuarial interest is that value or the estimated benefits.
Okay.
Our fund is a DB fund or a defined benefit fund. What it means in simple terms is if you become a member of the GPF today, and you are a certain age, we can then estimate as to how much we are going to pay you at the date of exit. Date of exit can be at retirement or a date that is not predetermined. For instance, for a resignation, we can calculate as to how much we're going to pay you at the end of this month should you resign. That's in simple terms what actuarial interest is. It's totally different to the interest you'd earn from an investment at a bank. We call it an actual interest purely because it is calculated based on your pensionable service, your age, your salary at a particular time, and how you're going to exit.
Okay.
Yes, we use different factors depending on how you exit and the age at that date.
Why does the age matter? I mean, is the mode in terms of calculating the interest based on the market factors, how the market is performing or how the economy is performing? Why age in particular?
Retirement funds are designed to cater for or to pay you an income at retirement age.
Okay.
So the reason actuarial factors are determined by age as one of the factors, it's purely because we calculate as to how long you still have before you reach the age of retirement.
And when does actuarial interest paid out as a benefit?
So actuarial interest is paid out when you exit the fund and we have to pay you a lump sum only.
Okay.
This would be in a case of a resignation or retirement if you don't have pensionable service that is more than 10 years. In a case of a death, when your unexpired service period is also less than 10 years. So this would be for all modes of exit, whereby you are going to receive only a lump sum without monthly pension. This would exclude retirement, normal retirement, when you have 10 years or more in pensionable service. Also, 2-pot system was introduced last year.
Yes.
You're going to be paid actual interest if you make a withdrawal from your savings pot.
Okay.
Other pots are excluded from, or the retirement pot is excluded from actual interest. If you resign and either you take your benefits as cash, we then pay you an actual interest.
Okay, as a resigner, I leave the government service and go work corporate or anywhere else, and then I come back after 10 years. So is that a factor in terms of, you know, the number of years that I've left government service?
It's not a factor. If you resign from the employment of government and move to the private sector, in most cases, what would happen is the member would then take the benefit, the actual interest, as a cash lump sum. Right? Okay. Other ways they can do it is they can then transfer to what we call an approved fund, being your new pension fund, or transfer it to a preservation fund. And in those cases, would pay actual interest. So going back to your question, what then happens if you leave government employment for 10 years and come back? That would not be taken into consideration when we calculate what your benefits are. So what we're going to take into consideration is your pensionable service from when you rejoined the government employees pension fund.
Right, right. And then, Isaac, let's talk about, you know, the GEPF membership obviously being diverse with people of all ages and genders and different benefits payable depending on the circumstances, say death, resignation, or retirement. How then do you ensure that benefits payable to the different members are fair?
So simply, we believe on fairness. We don't discriminate. Both female and male members of the GEPF are contributing at the same rate, and their benefits are calculated the same way. Okay. The only difference where there would be a difference in the benefits that we are going to pay out is dependent on how you exit the fund. If you are going to exit the fund as a resignation and you get a lump sum, only a lump sum, it then means the benefits that you are going to be receiving would be much lesser than somebody who's going on normal retirement and receiving a lump sum together with lifelong monthly pension. Okay. That's the only difference. Otherwise, all the benefit calculations are the same, irrespective of whether you are male or female.
You've just touched on the different modes of exiting the fund, like resignation or death, but you didn't touch on dismissal. Would that be considered as a factor?
So dismissal is treated as the same as resignation. Okay. There are no additional benefits that you would receive or any reduction of benefits. If you are dismissed from your employment and you exit the fund, you'd be paid the same benefit as somebody who has resigned voluntarily.
All right, let's leave it there for now. Please do join us after this ad break. Leli, Yilungelo Lakho. We'll be right back. Welcome back everybody. Sakomukela futhi ke mbukele tincingo tethu sesivuliwe ukuthi manje ungaba ingcenye yenkulumo yethu namhla ungashara licingo khona manje lapha e-studio ku-011 714 0671 noma ke 011 714 0672 ungasithumela futhi na WhatsApp ku 060-844-9857 noma ke usithumele i-email ku consumer@sabc.co.za noma ke usithole ku Facebook. So make sure that you grab your phone and call us right now. It's a very important topic that we're having today, especially if you are a government employee. Ngoba na ke namhla sine GEPF itasichazela kabanti ke ukuthi ke i-actual interest noma ke actual factor yini in terms of calculating the value of your pension upon exiting the GEPF fund. Namhla ke sina Isaac Litlape ukhona ke lapha e-GEPF. Isaac, we do know that the member's pension is linked on a member's salary, upon exiting that particular fund, despite any other factor. So let's talk about whether that expected change in salary growth directly influence the value of the pension.
Yes, it does influence the value of the pension. So our benefits are based on two things. The final salary of a member and also the pensionable savings.
Yeah.
So if the salary changes, the value that we're going to pay out or the estimated benefit value would also change.
Okay.
So if we are looking at the actual interest, we also look at other things that would influence the change in that factor. The things I'm talking about would be economic factors and also demographic factors.
Okay.
If I need to go into it without necessarily complicating the discussion, if we are looking at economic factors, we are looking at things like investment returns. If we expect our investment returns to be higher in the coming period or coming year, what we then do is would need to set aside a little less than what we would have set aside if the investment returns expected were going to be lower. I will then talk about the salary, since you've introduced the salary into the discussion. When we determine the actual factors, we make assumptions of the growth in the salary. We say, for instance, because government employees received an annual salary increase of 4%, what are we forecasting for the next 3 years? If the salary would grow at a rate of, for example, 4% for the next 2 years, it then means we need to set aside more, because the estimated value of the pension benefits would have grown. In terms of demographic factors, we look at life expectancy. We did our last statutory evaluation in the year 2021. And if you remember correctly, we were coming out of COVID. Life expectancy since then has changed. So that would also come into play. If now our assumptions is that our pensioners are going to live longer, let's take, for example, let's say in 2021, the life expectancy was 80 years. And in the last 3 years, it has changed to 85 years, for instance. It then means the GPF would need to set aside more to cater for the extra 5 years that we are going to be paying monthly pensions. So all these factors are taken into consideration, and then we arrive at an actual factor that we are going to be using to calculate our estimated pension values.
It's quite interesting that you raised the issue of life expectancy, and I know that it can be a very contentious topic to discuss. But now, kulmange life expectancy, what are you basing it on? Because life expectancy can be broad. I mean, in terms of some of the racial groups, have you had a discussion, or have you had or conducted some research in terms of the different demographics, in terms of the different racial groups, in terms of the geopolitical situation of that particular demographic group, for you to come up with an assumption or an expected value of a pension based on those factors that we've just mentioned when it when it comes to life expectancy?
Yes. I'll answer your question in twofold. The statutory valuation, or the process of us arriving at these actuarial factors, is done by an independent actuary. And the Actuarial Society of South Africa has guidelines as to how you arrive at things like life expectancy.
Yeah.
They also have data to back up the numbers that they would share with the actuaries. For instance, if they're going to say life expectancy has changed, they're basing that on the data they've received from numerous sources. It can be insurance companies or directly from the Home Affairs database. Then they arrive at that number, and they use that number as a guideline for independent actuaries who are calculating things like life expectancy and actual factors.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is this is backed up by data. If we're talking about economic factors, there are studies that have been done. The National Treasury and the Reserve Bank would then indicate as to what the expectation is in terms of the economy, how the economy is going to perform for the next number of years.
Now, let's talk about the future benefit payable to a member. Is it correct to assume that that particular benefit is based on assumptions, based on pension increases and on the member's age?
Yes, you are correct. Our estimate is based on the economic assumptions that I spoke about, investment returns, our assumptions on how the salaries are going to grow, estimated or forecast pension increases, and our life expectancy for example, as one of the demographic factors.
Yeah.
And also we look at retirement patterns. As a pension fund, a member can retire early. They can retire at normal retirement age, which is 60 years, and they're also allowed to retire late at 65.
Got you.
So based on the data that we have, we can then arrive at assumptions that will then be translated into factors that we use for our calculations.
Okay. Yeah, I want us to touch a little bit more on the assumption part because there's a little bit of a gray area there. But for now, let's take our first caller. Sina Mam Sambo, ulapha ke eJozi. Sakumodo ehlele sawubona mama.
Yebo baba.
Siphilile kunjani mama?
Sikhona njani baba?
Ukhala kusithi mama, khuluma nathi mama. What's on your mind?
Ngicela ukubuza kubhuti Isaac ukuthi kuthatha isikhathi esingakanani ukuthi i-retired member ibhadalwe ama-benefits wayo, because ngi-retire ngo-December and on the 14th of October i-GPAA yangisendela i-message ukuthi ithole ifile. Nge-20 zaka-November yayithumela ku-GEPF. Up until now angabhadalwi lump sum, angabhadali salary.
Okay, Mam Sambo, siyabonga kakhulu ke kusishayela. But Isaac ukuthi akuchazela kabanti ke kepha kwanye lo mbukeli asisiphinde sibambe lapho sisishelela ngasetitolo hlala kanye nathi ungasanyakati. Siyabuya khona manje. Leli ilungelo lakho. Welcome back everybody. Kumbula ke mbukeli ukuthi icingo tethu sesivuliwe ukuthi nawe ungaba ingcenye yenkulumo yethu namhla ungashara icingo khona manje la e-studio ku 011-714-0671 noma ke 011-714-0672. You can also send us a WhatsApp to 060-844-9857 or email your thoughts and topic suggestions to consumer@sabc.co.za or rather catch us on our Facebook page. Now before break besinamake sambu ke Isaac ukhala ngekuthi ke upenshelwe nga December last year. Kepha ke akayitholi lump sum, akatholi ne-salary, and it's now month 3. I-GEPF icabanga ukuthi uphila ngani make Sambo. let's talk about some of the factors that lead to, you know, the length of time before, I mean, between retirement and the earning of the first salary.
Simpiwe, I think I need to start by apologizing for the delay, and also mention that we are required by law, government employees pension law, to make all payments within 60 days from the date of exit. So if we need to do a calculation, we should have paid this member before the end of February.
Yeah. Now, since it's 60 days, is it 60 calendar days
No,
or 60 working days?
60 days from the date of exit.
Okay.
Not calendar days from date of exit.
Okay.
I'm happy to take her details, then we'll contact her back and get her details and check on the system as to why she has not been paid.
What would normally cause Emma backlogs, Emma glitches lanje?
So normally what would contribute to the delay in the payment, it would be errors on the exit documents that we receive from employers. Another thing would be a late submission of documents by the employer. She may have retired in December, but you may find that we only received her documents after she left the employment.
Okay.
Meaning we received the documents after the 31st of December.
Okay.
Yes.
So while Mam Sambo is still watching, you know, waiting for you to make that clarification, you know, in terms of solving this issue?
So we need to check first on the system as to what caused the delay, so we can then communicate exactly what she needs to do if there's action from her side. Otherwise, if everything from our side is fine, we're just delayed in the process of making the payment, we'll advise and also make a commitment as to when we can be able to finalize the claim.
Okay. Now, on the issue of assumption of future benefits, we know that it can be open to abuse. Nangabe wena nje use GEPF ubona igama lami lapha ukuthi you know, I'm due for retirement, and ubona ukuthi ay Simpiwe bekavela hlupha man. Bese assume ukuthi ke i-value benefit yakhe it's lower than it actually is. Are you cognizant of the fact that it can be open to abuse?
Yes, I do understand that, but I also need to mention that the word assumption is a technical term that is being used for things like the calculation of factors.
Yeah.
So what we mean by, in simple terms, is we look at, for instance, let's look at retirements. We look at when pensioners are taking their retirements. Like I was saying, you have early retirement, normal retirement, and also late retirements. So if we have more people, or the majority of our pensioners leaving the fund by mode of early retirement, the assumption that we are making is that the trend will continue. Meaning going forward, in the next 3 years, more people are going to leave the fund by mode of early retirement. Okay. And because of that, it then means we need to set aside more money to cater for the payments of pension, monthly pension, for a longer period.
Yeah. And considering that, you know, the value of the benefits changes over time, actuarial interest or actuarial interest factors, are they also likely to change as well?
Yes, they are likely to change. We are required by law to complete a statutory evaluation every 3 years. So based on that, when we conduct our statutory evaluation, we look at the economic factors and demographic factors, and that will then influence the factors that need to be applied going forward. So the process is our evaluator would do a statutory evaluation of the fund, report to us with new factors. Then the factors would be taken through a number of committees within the GPF before they are being recommended to the Board of Trustees for approval before we can then implement them. Once we get the Board of Trustees to approve those factors, we then do communication with our stakeholders. So our stakeholders would be the Minister of Finance and also the labor representatives. This would be your labor unions. We engage with them, we get the agreement on the factors that we need to implement. Once those engagements have been communicated, we then communicate with members of the fund on the changes that are going to be made to the factors. So going back as to how often it happens every 3 years.
Oh, every 3 years.
Yes.
Okay. And having said that, Isaac, maybe perhaps give us a practical examples using the key drivers and some of the assumptions you mentioned before of how the actuarial interest increases or changes in specific cases.
I'll give an example. If Isaac is 55 years old and we estimate that by the time he goes on retirement at the age of 60, the value of the pension that we need to pay out would be 1 million rands, being it a lump sum together with monthly pensions. The GPF would set aside the actuarial value. Let's say the actuarial value this year or today would be 900,000, for instance. If Isaac gets a promotion or he gets a salary increase that is outside our estimates, it then means when we do an actuarial valuation, we have to take that into account to say if Isaac was earning 10,000 rands today and he got a 10% increase for the first year, another 10% in the second year, it then means what we are going to pay out when he goes on retirement is no longer 1 million. So we need to adjust the value of what we are setting aside today so we can be able to meet that obligation when he goes on retirement.
Okay, now on the issue of adjustment, based on what?
This would be based on information that we have that we are going to use for the assumptions. I'll give an example, another example that is related to salaries. A few years back, Labour and government got into a salary increase agreement of a period of 3 years. At that point, we knew that the salary increase of government employees is going to grow by 3% in the first year, 4% in the second year, and 5% in the third year.
Yes.
Right. If that changes, it then means it changes our assumption, what our estimated salary increases would have been.
Oh, okay.
If Isaac is earning 10,000 today, with a 3% increase, it would give him a salary increase of 300 rands in the first year. If that changes and it moves from 3% to 5%, it then means Isaac's salary at the end of the first year would be 10,500. What that then translates into, it translates into a higher benefit that the GPF would have to pay should Isaac exit the fund. Another example is investment returns. If we assume that our investment returns for the next 3 years are going to be CPI plus 2% in the first year, CPI plus 3% in the second year, should we have lower investment returns, it will then translate into a change in what we need to set aside.
Yes.
We'd need to set aside more so we can be able to pay the estimated, the benefit that we had estimated when there's an exit.
Yes.
To put it in simple terms, or maybe a language that our viewers would understand, we are saying as a GPF we are a defined benefit fund, and we're going to estimate a benefit that we're going to pay when you exit. The GPF needs to set aside money now. If we use an example of a house. We say you still have 10 years to work. At the end of 10 years, when you go on retirement, would give you a house that is worth 1 million rands.
Interesting point that you're making there, but please hold your thoughts because we have to take this break now. And I suppose it speaks to the elasticity of the funds. But let's leave it there for now. Mbukeli, let's pause it right there. Siphinde sisishelele ngasetitolo. Hlala kanye nathi ungasanyakati. Siyabuya khona manje. Leli lungelo lakho. Welcome back, everybody. 011-714-0671 and 011-714-0672. These are participation lines. They are on your screens right now. So shayela icingo khona manje ke bekunene kuvakalisa umbono wakho noma ke ubute umbuto kunaba baka GEPF labakhona bazivakashela namhla e-studio. Ungasithumela futhi na WhatsApp ku 060-844-9857 noma ke usithumele i-email ku consumer@sabc.co.za or even interact with us on our Facebook page. Namhla ke we're making you understand how your pension grows. Siyebuyeketa ke indzaba ekuthi ingabe impension yakho ikhula kanjani. Sinaye ke Isaac Lihlaphe kulapha ke GEPF. He did mention earlier on ukuthi ke it's linked to your age and of course the market indicators. Kunemifakela ke yemibuto in between kumele ke ukuthi asichazisele yona ke. Now before break you're just making an example about how the value of a house grows vis-a-vis the value of your benefit. Just take us through that.
Yes, thank you. Let me pick up where I stopped. I was saying, if we promise you a house on retirement and the house value is estimated to be $1 million in 10 years' time, we'll need to buy the house today. And if we're going to buy the house today, we'll buy it for 500,000, for instance. Depending on how the economy is performing, the value of the house will change. So if we then go back to pension benefits, if the economy doesn't grow as we had expected, it then means as the GPF would need to set aside more. Going back to that example of a house, we promised you a house valued at 1 million rand. If you're approaching retirement, let's say you are 5 years before retirement, and the value of that house is still 500,000. It then means we need to do improvements to that house. So by the time you retire, you'd be receiving a house worth $1 million. Now the GPF is funded at 110%, meaning that for every R1 we owe our members, we have assets worth R1.10. Right. It then means if the economy is not doing well going forward, our funding level would be reduced because our funding level would be, or the liability of the fund would be growing much faster than the economy, much faster than our investment returns, much faster than how our assets are growing.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
If the economy is performing much better than we had expected and the assets are growing, it then means the value that we are setting aside now for somebody who's going to go on retirement in 10 years would then be reduced.
Okay. Now back to the example of a house that you just mentioned earlier on. We know that property generally gains value over time, generally speaking, but practically speaking, there could be some factors that could lead to a decline or an added increase in the value of that property, because we consider the socio-economic factors. Maybe it's built near a shack or maybe an area where there's shacks, or maybe it's built near an area or industrial area. Those factors around that property will determine the future value of that house. So at this particular point, we don't know what the future value of that particular property would be. So we're just basing it on assumption. Is it really, correct to assume that you're basing the future value on factors that have question marks?
Yes, we are. The reason being that there's no way of determining what's going to happen in the next 5 years, for instance. And if we don't put those assumptions, you may find that the fund has not put aside enough to cater for people who are going to go on retirement, did not cater enough for people who are going to exit the fund by way of death or resignation.
Asasikhuluma-ke ngemnotho-ke, the economy, how well or how poorly the economy performs. Asasithi-ke, the economy increases. Does the value of the pension increase as well? And if the economy contracts, does the value of the benefit contracts as well? And does it mean that members will also lose money in terms of such a contraction of the economy?
Yes, that is correct. Retirement savings, or money that we've been collecting from members to build up our assets, is invested in the economy. Because it's invested in the economy, if the economy is performing very well, it then means those investments would grow. And as a result of those investments growing, the value of the pension would grow. If there's a contraction in the economy, it then means the value of the pension would be reduced. And because we see the reduction coming, we need to do adjustments so that we can pay the member what we promised. Remember, like I was saying earlier on, we promise a member a benefit that is based on the pensionable service and salary.
Okay. So the members might lose money in terms in case the economy contracts.
In real terms, the members would not lose money because they would not be exiting the fund or leaving the fund at that particular day.
So you're hoping that the economy will grow and then the value will go back to where it was?
Yes, that's the assumption that we are making. If our investments are not performing that well, we change our investment strategy so that we can invest in high growth assets.
Okay.
So we can be able to pay what we promised our members to pay at the date of exit.
Ingabe ikhona indlela yini of sort of cushioning the members' pension against a possible contraction of the economy? Ukuthi-ke nangabe umnotho-ke uyancipha noma-ke uyehla, but i-value ibe lapho ikhona khona. Is there a way of cushioning them against such?
Yes, there is a way. Earlier on, I spoke about our funding level. I said we are 110% funded. The 10% would be reserves that would cater for contraction in the economy, or our investments are not growing well, while other factors like salary increases are increasing at a pace that is much higher or much faster than the economy itself.
Yeah. So when can we expect the next changes in the actuarial interest?
We are busy with our evaluation report. They are still processing that evaluation report. So we expect the report to be released later this year. Depending on the report, there might be adjustments to the factors that we use to estimate as to what the retirement savings are at a particular day.
Okay. And then what procedure does the GEPF embark on in terms of introducing new sets of factors?
In terms of the process that we follow, our independent actuary or fund valuator would do a report to compare what our liabilities are against our assets. Based on that, they would then arrive at actuarial factors. They would then draft a report for submission to the GPF. Okay. A number of specialists within the GPF will then review the reports, take the reports through a number of committees of the GPF, and make a recommendation to the Board of Trustees for the adoption of those factors.
Okay.
Following that, then we do consultation with the Minister of Finance together with labor unions. Once we have concluded those engagements and there are agreements between us and our stakeholders, we then communicate the changes to our members and implement.
Okay. Asishiye lapho ke Isaac. Mbukele for now, let's take a final ad break. Asihlangane kuMasibuya etitolo ungasanyamalali phela. Siyabuya khona manje. Leli Yilungelo lakho. Welcome to our very, very last segment. If you just joined us, pension yako ikhula kanjani? What are some of the factors that lead to the growth or the decline of your pension funds? Especially if you are a government employee under the GEPF. Sina Isaac Letlapeke utasichazela ukuthi ke ingabe interest ye pension yakho noma ke pension yakho ikhula kanjani? Under what circumstances is it tied to the economic growth or economic contraction and all those factors in between? Now, just before we wrap the show, unfortunately we're out of time. Let's talk about some of the factors that we possibly left out in terms of determining the future value of a pension or a member's pension fund.
Simple, I think I mentioned all factors that are very important in arriving at the actual interest or an estimate of what the retirement benefits would be for a member of the GPF.
Yeah.
Very important factors. When we look at economic factors, we're looking at investment returns, what the GPF is expecting to get out of the investments that we've made. Salary increases of employees or members of the GPF, and also looking at our estimated pension increases for the next 3 years. Other factors are demographic factors. We are looking at life expectancy, the patterns of exiting the fund. We are looking at ill health retirements. And based on that, we arrive at a factor that we are using to calculate what the value of the benefit is. And it's very important to clarify that actuarial interest is the value of your benefits today or at a specific date. Specific date in that if you're going to retire in 5 years' time, based on the actuarial factor, we'll be able to tell you as to how much your benefit would be at that date. Right?
Got you.
And I don't want to use the phrase that the pension benefit will grow and decrease over time. This is purely based on the fact that as a member of the pension fund, we are promising you a benefit that is based on your salary and pensionable savings at the date of retirement. If we then say your benefits are going to grow and decrease over time, that might be misinterpreted. To say, I'm a member of the GPF, if I have 100,000 as my estimated benefits or actual interest, tomorrow I might end up or wake up with a benefit that is estimated at 50,000. So I want to remove that so there's no misinterpretation. What I'm saying is, if you're a member of the GPF, you continue contributing to the GPF and your salary is increasing, over time your benefit will also increase in line with those salary increases.
Yeah. And in as much as we all try to be positive, but we need to be pragmatic and practical in some of the issues. Say, for instance, I like the point that you made earlier on, that if the economy contracts, obviously the pension value contracts as well. But assuming that the economy will grow and the pension value, of course, will go back to where it was. But what if a member is retiring next year? and the economy contracts, does that mean, because we know that an economy cannot grow within a year.
Yes.
So by the time the member retires, the economy has already contracted. Will the member lose money, or will the member be compensated for that period of contraction in a way?
The pensioner would not lose money because the benefits are guaranteed.
Yes.
However, I can say that should the money that we've set aside not be enough to pay the benefit when the member retires, we are going to be using our reserves to cover the shortfall.
All right.
So as an individual member of the GPF, whether the economy is growing or not, your benefits are going to be paid, and the calculation will be based on your salary at the date of exit. I don't think there would be a possibility where your salary is decreased, even though the economy is not doing well.
Gosh,
so
what a
if your
relief.
salary is increasing, and there are no changes to the factors that we use to determine what the value of your pension is, you are not going to be affected. And like I was saying, we review these factors every 3 years. So if you're going to be retiring in the next year or so, you should not be worried.
Okay. That is so reassuring. That is so encouraging to hear. And then actuarial interest, Yona, does it affect the financial position or the funding model or the funding level of the GEPF? Because that plays a role in terms of determining the value of the pension fund.
Yes, actuarial interest affect the funding level of the fund. If the factors are saying the economy would grow much quicker, it then means the fund would need to set aside more money today to cater for the benefit when you exit.
Yeah.
So because we need to set aside more, it then means the liability of the fund towards its members is growing. So more money would be needed to cater for or pay out the liability. So by saying that, it then means our funding level will then decrease a bit to cater for the liability that has grown over time.
Okay. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but we're getting so many questions from our viewers, but unfortunately the lines are closed. So where can viewers, in particular the GEPF members, get in touch with you? Sibena Magesambo earlier on, who also asked a question on when her benefits will be paid out. So how can they get in touch with the GEPF to talk about those specific concerns and questions?
We have a number of platforms to serve our members. We have offices across the country. If members have concerns, they can then visit our offices and they will be assisted. We also have a call center where members can call. It's a toll-free number. They would be assisted by a consultant agent who would be able to clarify if there are any questions. If you need more information around actuarial interest and how we do our calculations, the information is on our website, www.gepf.co.za.
All right, Isaac, great chatting to you, man. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
All right, there we go. Wanyelo ngibukele ke sasifike emaphethelweni ehlelo lethu namhlanje. Ngithanda ukubonga ke isivakashi sethu Isaac Lehlaphe from GEPF. Ngekuba nathi kuze kube ngimanje. Ngithanda ukubonga kanye nani ke babukeli kuba nathi ke kuze kube ngimanje. Asihlangane futhi ngesikhathi lesitago lapho ke silesela lenye ke indzaba letawuthinza wena nemalungelo akho njengemthengi. From me Simphiwe Ngongwane and the rest of the team, sizike nitsale kahle and wishing you a great week ahead. Cheers.
Yilungelo.